Wow, did we wake up to some shocking news this morning. There's a report in Golf Digest, according to a PGA Tour insider, saying that he is 100% positive that Jon Rahm would give back all of his LIV Golf millions if it meant he could rejoin the PGA Tour. And shockingly, we've heard some of these hints from Jon Rahm before, making us think there could definitely be some credibility to that. So we're going to dive into all of those quotes. But the other thing that might be pressing this issue is now, after waiting what seems like many months for any type of update on where we're headed with the PGA Tour and LIV Golf merger, we've finally got a response from the horse's mouth, with Jay Monahan in a press conference the other day talking about where those talks are headed. And I'll tell you what, it really doesn't look good if you're someone who's rooting for the merger and for them to come together. And not only that, we've also heard from PatrickKley, the PGA Tour Player Board Advisory. He's in there. He's in the negotiations too, Mike. And he also is saying stuff that really sounds very boilerplate, does not sound very promising at all.
Yeah, we went from no news to now big news.
Exactly.
Yep.
So we're finally hearing something. Yep. It just might not be what you wanted to hear. And this might be driving why we're hearing from Jon Rahm and the insider saying how badly he wants back. We're going to get into all those quotes in just a second. Before we do, we want to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Titleist. And guys, in the pursuit of speed and playable distance, Titleist engineers developed a new material construction that unlocks the next generation of driving excellence. The new GT Driver Series represents the biggest technological leap ever in the Titleist driver design. Mike and I, we had the very eye-opening experience of getting fit for the GT drivers while we were at TPI just a couple of weeks ago. I ended up getting fit into the GT2, which is really the ultimate speed and forgiveness. You get across the face, you get so much more consistent distance, and what we saw was consistent spin numbers. And that's really across the board with the GT2, GT3, and the low spin GT4. And when you have that consistent spin, it means even on some of your not best shots, you're still going to get consistent carry distance, which is what we're all after. So the experience in the new GT drivers, we could talk about it all day, but really where the rubber meets the road is you got to feel them for yourself. You got to put yourself in the hands of a great fitter. Go and try them for yourself. So go to Titleist.com, find a fitter near you, and give yourself the opportunity to hit these drivers, because they are something else, and we saw that firsthand. So now, Mike, first of all, before I read some of these quotes, are you shocked at all? Does this feel off the wall? Because one thing we've got to do is we've got to see how credible this really is, right? Because one thing I'm going to say right off the bat, this tour insider is giving us this information from an anonymous standpoint, right? So you guys too, weigh in the comments as we go through these quotes. Do you feel that this is real? If this is really what Jon Rahm is saying behind closed doors, or do you feel like it's stirring the pot in this whole kind of PGA Tour versus LIV thing? You guys weigh in the comments, but Mike, I want your take on it.
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised. I mean, I think it was back in February when Rahm was interviewed right around the waste management. He had an interesting quote about, severe FOMO driving past TPC Scottsdale, and he's hinted at that a bunch.
He has.
He said how he's missed it, and I think Torrey Pines is a place he knows he'll probably never play again. It's special to him. I think he got engaged there, to his wife. So you could sense it from his FOMO.
Absolutely. And bring everybody up to speed. I'll read you some of those quotes. So this was just a couple months ago, and Rahm was asked if he was missing anything, and he said, "I've explained so many times how important Torrey is for me. Driving by as often as I had, and knowing that I wasn't going to play there, it's definitely emotional. That's one of the things that I'm going to miss." And he said, "I'm hoping in the near future I can be back playing in some of those events. I would certainly love to go back and play in some of them." So this was Rahm just a couple of months ago. And what I think this does is it gives a little bit of validation to what we're now hearing from this tour insider, because if that's what he's willing to say publicly, that he's missing certain events, we've got more of those quotes we'll talk about in a second. But it makes me wonder what's going on behind closed doors. And one thing I'll set this up with is that it appears, and the speculation that's been flying around since this news broke, especially on social media and otherwise, it appears that the motivation might be that Jon Rahm is kind of missing a degree of the spotlight.
Big time. That's
right?
what I think, yeah.
Absolutely. And we could debate all day, and we've talked about it here before, ratings, who has more people watching, who doesn't. But I think there's a certain degree that then, and you'll see in some of these quotes about a potential miscalculation Jon Rahm made. I think, and who knows what kind of bill of goods he was sold. Maybe he was told that, hey, once you come over to LIV, the fans will follow and it's going to be an explosion. Whatever it may be, I think he feels like he's a little bit playing in the dark right now.
Yeah, buyer's remorse. And you know what? I think for Rahm, you probably remember right after he won the Masters, the 23 Masters, the next week at the RBC, he showed up and they made a big deal out of it. Rory wasn't there. And like the news went nuts on it. And they were showing like Rahm just won. He could have went on this New York circuit media tour, but instead he's here for the fans. And then like instantly Rahm became like the PGA Tour's like new poster boy. Right. You know, like nobody was really talking Scheffler. They were, but Rory. And then all of a sudden he went to LIV, and then so it's just like, where'd he go?
Right. And especially for the PGA Tour fans who haven't made that jump over and are watching. But you're right. Right before Jon Rahm went over it, he was on top of the world. Yeah. He was the PGA Tour's face in a lot of ways, all those types of things. So let's get into these quotes because this is important. And then, like I said, we can dissect them. So this is according to, the source for the Golf Digest. It's an unnamed source. All they're calling him is a tour insider. And he said, I am 100% positive that if John could go back to give the money back to the Saudis and come back to the tour, he couldn't write the check fast enough. And okay, so like that's kind of like building that, but like again, why? Like what's the reasoning behind it? So what he goes on to say is, now there are only 4 times a year when he's playing that anybody is remotely interested. He thought his stature in the game was secure no matter where he was playing. And it was a bad miscalculation. Yeah. So what this insider effectively is saying is that Rahm feels like he's removed himself from the spotlight. He's the only time he has eyeballs on him is the majors. People are not coming over and watching him play on LIV. And here is where, again, I want your guys' take. Let us know in the comments. Do you agree with that? Are you someone who was rooting for and watching Rahm and then stopped when he moved over to LIV? Or are you someone who followed him over there? Or even are you someone who was a LIV fan from the start and you were happy that Jon Rahm, and now you're actually seeing more of him? There's a lot of different takes out there, so I want to hear them in the comments. But there's a certain degree where I could see where this is coming from and understand that. Look at how Jon Rahm, his performance is greatly been below, I'm sure, what his own targets were this year. Sure. Right? And it puts a lot more pressure if really being in the spotlight, and that's what these guys want. They're guys who are very accustomed to being top of the world, being household names, all this type of stuff. If now the pressure becomes that the general audience of golfers is only going to see you 4 times a year, there's a lot more pressure to play well in those majors. Oh, big time. And he wasn't playing well in the majors. He wasn't. And he just won recently on LIV. I think it took him like 11 tries. But, I mean, imagine like you walk around the streets or you ask golf fans like, hey, when's the last time Jon Rahm won? They might not even know he won on LIV. You know what I mean? Yeah. So absolutely took himself out of the spotlight. And honestly, I don't think the $500,000 that the number was quoted. $500 million, roughly? I'm sorry, $500 million. Well, $500,000. $500 million. I don't think he got it all. I doubt he got it all up front. I'm sure there was a little bit. He got a little bit. So the check he would write back wouldn't be that much. Well, here's the other interesting thing. If I read between that, this would if he could makes me wonder how airtight are these contracts that these guys signed. Right? If that's the fact, could he do it? Like, let's just say in a hypothetical world, could Jon Rahm take the money, pay back, and say, I'm sorry, this was a miscalculation, I'm heading back? He might not. It might be iron tight that you cannot leave. There could be non-compete clauses in there. Who knows? We're not privy to that information. But the bigger thing here is like understanding that he's missing out on, when we say those bigger events, there are other big watched events by general public, things like the Players, the Waste Management always catches like that fringe audience and brings them in. And those are the areas where he's not being seen. Right now, what I'm seeing, and we're going to talk about what Jay says and whether these tours are going to come together or not, but I'm seeing that it's becoming very pocketed, the audiences. There's like there's the general audience who will watch the majors and some big name events that have been around forever, like the Players. Then there are guys who will just watch LIV and there are guys who will watch the PGA Tour events, but we're not getting as much crossover. So we've really fragmented the audience. Right. But Jon Rahm, this is another important thing. And this goes back to some quotes directly from him a couple months ago. It's not just PGA Tour events that he's missing out on. it's also DP World Tour. Don't forget, as a European golfer, there's a lot of events there that matter to him as well. So part of those quotes we were reading earlier, what Jon Rahm had said, he said, I would love to, if allowed, and if I can go play the Spanish Open. And if it doesn't conflict with LIV's schedule, right? But a tournament that both me and Terrell Hatton, his teammate, are going to miss dearly is Wentworth. If I qualify, I'd still love to go and play in Dubai, the DP World Tour Championship. There's certainly events I would like to play. So he's not only talking about the PGA Tour, as those two being an entity that works together. Right. Now when he went to LIV, that's it. You were out of all those events. And, these are events that he largely grew up watching, on the European side. But he in that same interview, he addressed the tour as well. He said, PGA Tour, we'll see. If there's ever a way back and a way where we can play, even if it's as an invite, I will take it. Like I said, there's certain events that are special to me and I would love to support. So this is what's going to draw into what we're going to talk about in a second with Jay Monahan. I wouldn't be too surprised, too, if what's motivating and driving this is Rahm thinking, I'll join LIV. This will be kind of part of the catalyst. And this is what he could have been hearing, the catalyst to really make it so that put their feet to the fire and these two tours have to come together. And maybe as part of that merger is there's going to be some sort of invite system or crossover events. Right. So maybe they take some of the most popular PGA Tour events, the Waste Management, etc., the players, and they become invite events. And now it's almost having your cake and eating it.
You're creating a better golf product. Like, why wouldn't they just do that?
Well, we've been saying that and driving that home here on the podcast forever. Is that what did this split really do? It made a couple of guys very rich, and it made us fans confused and split in two different directions of who to watch where and when. We can't watch these guys together other than the majors.
Right. I mean, could you imagine the ratings of the 2025 players if they allowed Brooks, DJ, Cam Smith all to play in it? It would be through the roof.
It absolutely would. But there's hurdles to that because there's guys on the PGA Tour that would be disgruntled. Why are you letting them back when they took all this money and they're over there, except XYZ. But where I think Rahm was maybe in his head, and I can only speculate here because we're getting a lot of blanket, broad statements, but we're not getting like the real clarifications we want. I can only speculate that maybe John was thinking, hey, I'll join. My joining will really put the pressure on these two groups to come back together. And as part of that, maybe we're split and I missed the PGA Tour events for a year. But then after that, there's now combined events, a combined schedule, invite events, and I can work my way back.
Yeah.
Fast forward, though, we've been saying this week in and week out, nothing's happened. No update. Countless deadlines have come and gone. Firm deadlines, like, January 1st for the framework agreement. More loose deadlines, like something by the Masters. Then all four majors go by, and now the PGA Tour season is in two events away from wrapping up, and zero, right? So I want to talk about what Jay had said, and it's the first, like you said, first real update we've gotten. Is there anything significant in this? And backing up with PatrickKley. Before we do, we also want to thank our other sponsor, FootJoy. And FootJoy is the #1 shoe in golf because they offer the widest selection of sizes, styles, and performance options than any other shoe out there. And we could speak firsthand to that because I have a range of them that I wear. I absolutely love the Hyperflex. Been wearing it a ton lately this summer. It's kind of been my go-to shoe. And then the Premier series. Yeah. And one thing I've loved about the Premier is that they truly do feel as good as they look.
They do.
It's such a they're all great looking shoe. There's different options that you can choose from. You can even take it at the next level and go to the MyJoys and customize them, which we've done for special events and things like that. But a shoe that looks that good should never be as comfortable as it is.
I know, right?
And it really has blown me away. I've worn it for 36 holes walking. There's so much. And then you've got all of your additions to the FootJoy series, which are these off-course, spikeless sneakers. So now I'm finding that whether it's on or off the course, I'm wearing FootJoys, and the comfort level is just absolutely outstanding. So trust the brand that's been #1 forever. Trust your game to FootJoy, the #1 shoe in golf. And now back at it here. Let's talk about some of these quotes. So I think Jay had to know this was coming.
Of course.
Right? You're the FedEx Cup playoffs. This is the culmination of the season. This is, basically everything that the PGA Tour does leads up to these couple events.
He hasn't done a presser in a while.
He has not. Yeah. And now, the press is ready. They're chomping at the bit. They haven't had an update. He's sitting there. You're going to ask the questions. You're going to fire them off. Mm-hmm. I've said this before that, I'm just not, I think one of the biggest signs of good leadership is communication.
Sure.
And I'm just not seeing that because you know what? We're big boys. We can handle good or bad news. I think we want to have a resolution to this as fans. If you guys agree with us, let us know in the comments. But I think it's like, if you don't have good news to report, at least tell me that.
Yeah, right.
Right? Just give me an update.
Right.
So, Jay, one thing that, and this is something that I saw in Sports Illustrated this morning, is Jay essentially acknowledged, and this is what they said in Sports Illustrated, that the release of the 2025 PGA Tour schedule could be viewed as a sign that there will not be anything different between the PGA Tour and LIV Golf next year. So they released the schedule. That's just kind of locking it in. Because you really think about this and you say, these schedules and these events and the planning that requires that go into them are so far out that you can't make a last minute change and all of a sudden include people. Right. Like now I'm looking at it and I'm thinking the earliest we're going to get some sort of combined schedule, if there is one with crossover events, is 26.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's got to be at this point. I saw that it came out.
Yeah. And that tells you something. So now Jay, he's asked, basically where we're at and what we've been told. And I'll read this statement and then we'll give our take on it. Right. So he said, they're very complicated discussions. There's a lot of elements to them. When you have the level of interaction, we're continuing to meet and move forward and discuss and debate. You can't be anything but hopeful. So I'm like, that's a long way of saying nothing, right? These are some of the most political, responses. You're gonna just a politician out there. Absolutely. Let's say a whole lot of nothing, right? To me, that gave me nothing. You can nothing be hopeful. Now, reporters, as they should, pressing him on this, wanting to know more, asked about timeframes. He says, as it relates to times and timeframes and where we are, I'll just say we're in a good place with the conversations. That's the most important thing. He went on to say, I have a lot of meetings on the subjects. I'm not going to get into any of the specifics of it. It's a clear focus of mine. It's a clear focus of the organization. And that said, there's a lot of dialogue.
Wow.
Nothing. I think the only thing that we can say that we got out of that statement is still showing that there's a commitment.
Yeah, there's meetings. Yeah.
Him saying it's a clear focus of mine. Now, there's a lot of things as being the commissioner of the PGA Tour that you could have and put your attention into, and I'm sure it can be driven in a lot of different ways. He is stating there that it's a clear focus. It's a clear focus of the organization, PGA Tour Enterprises. That to me is telling him that they're telling us that they're still prioritizing it. Beyond that, it really sounds like we're no further along. There's really nothing substantive of this that he's given us. It's not even saying a new deadline. I would have loved to hear that. We've set a new deadline.
Yeah, I know.
At least it's something that we could hold him accountable to.
True.
So guys, as far as timeline goes, let me know. I'll tell you that we're it's a clear focus of ours, and we've set a new timeline to get this deal done by the end of the year. Say that to me.
Yeah.
He didn't even say go that far, right? So the next person who gets hit on it is PatrickKley.
Yeah, what did Cantlay have to say?
Player director of the PGA Tour policy board, which is of course why he's going to be asked. I think the one that everyone wants to ask and couldn't is Tiger Woods, because he's not there.
Right.
And I think Tiger is happily out of the spotlight right now, because I'm sure he doesn't want to give an update on nothing. But what Patrick said, and we're going to read between the lines here as well, he said, well, it's definitely quieted down. There hasn't been as much chatter the last few months, which has been nice. He said, I think that's just kind of the nature of it. There's going to be ebbs and flows, depending on what kind of information comes out or what announcements are made. Right. So, of course, there's going to be ebbs and flows. But, dude, we've been ebbing and flowing for 16 months.
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah.
Since the initial thing. And here's a guy like PatrickKley who's rejoicing in a way that it's quieted down. You know, you and I last year were at the standing there on the range at the event at TPC River Highlands, the Travelers.
Yes.
And that was still in the height of it. And I, even with the microphones off, could both verbally hear players talking about it and also see the expression on their face that they were all so sick of answering questions about LIV, the merger, whether they were going or not. So, and PatrickKley was one of the loudest about it. So I can see where, from a selfish point, players are happy that it's quieted down, that they no longer have to constantly address those questions and can start talking about other things. But there's a reason, you know, why those questions are there. It's because us as fans want to know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I wish fans can fire a league commissioner. You know, that'd be interesting. But no, I remember on that range, those guys. That was right when I think Jay was interviewed at the Travelers, and they were talking about like that Super Fall series. Yeah, whatever happened to that?
There is still something, and this really speaks to the confusion that's out there. I
saw the schedule. The next 8 weeks after the FedEx Cup are all the basic, you know, the Zozo, all the way up to November. So where's this new?
And there is some sort of other point system and stuff like that. And honestly, my mind's been so wrapped around this whole merger and where we're headed that it's been hard. It's going to get in the weed. But it feels like it's a lot of like, try this, try that. But no matter what, the writing's on the wall that nothing's really happening. So one more thing that PatrickKley, again, he was pressed again further by reporters, because if otherwise they're just going to keep giving these open blanket statements that don't give us anything. So he was asked very specifically, is there an end in sight to this process? And ends could be a lot of things. Ends could be a decision that we're not going to move forward. Ends could be a finalizing of this agreement, and we've got something. But what he said is, when you say end in sight, it's always evolving. The PGA Tour has always been changing and is trying to evolve and get better. Depends what you mean by what you define as the finish line. But I know all of us are working incredibly hard all the time to get the best outcome. That sounds to me like the old, like, it depends on what the definition of is. Right. Right. Yeah. You know, come on, right? You know what we're asking.
Right. Yeah.
Don't beat around the bush. You know what we're asking. You know, depends on how you define a finish line. Okay, if I was in the room, I'd be like, let me define it for you as clear terms as possible. Finish line is either the deal's happening or it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Which one is it?
Yeah.
You know, everything's promising, we're talking, everything like that. So I think, again, I'm not... there's no intention here to hate on the guys. I think what I'm trying to do is express the frustration that we as fans have with not having someone speak up and give us a clearer answer. And at the end of the day, like I said, we're big boys. Whether you decide to come together or you don't, just make a decision.
Yeah,
we're 16 months in. Just make a decision. And it looks like not only are we 16 months in, I'm saying this more forcefully because with the 25 schedule being released, it looks like there's going to be nothing for another full year. Make a decision. This way, players can make a true decision of whether to go or stay. And you won't have potentially this toss-up like you have with Rahm, where maybe he thought one thing and it's not, and maybe now he wants back. Again, we can only speculate. Same thing with fans. Maybe now we can start to understand, okay, this is the world now we live in, and decide on how we want to, where, when, and how we want to watch and attend events, all that type of stuff. But right now, first update, finally, we're all sitting on the edge of our seats, and we got nothing.
We got nothing. And I'd love for you guys to weigh in on this one, if you can. I'm going to ask you this, Frank. Do you think the PGA Tour is in a better state than it was a year ago?
So a year ago, meaning still
like
what,
the panic,
with
the frantic, like what's going on? Golf is dying. Everyone hates it. I feel like right now people are enjoying it.
I think the PGA Tour is settling into a rhythm, and I think LIV is settling into a rhythm. And I think what that might result from that is that nothing ever happens. They never come together. However, I still think the big elephant in the room is the desire for players to be able to, like Jon Rahm, play in events that mean something to them, and the huge desire for fans like us to see all the names together more than 4 times per year. So as much as they might, you know, they're each innovating in their own leagues and coming up with their own ways and trying to find ways to move on, there's still something big that's being missed.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just say, here's my fix. You ready, Jay? I'm going to give it to you right now. Give the LIV guys their world ranking points. right? Figure out a way how they can get world. Let them play their way into not only majors, but into PGA Tour signature events, because those are all the great ones, right? And we're all the PGA Tour players who whine about it or cry about it. You're going to pay them off with retention bonuses anyway. And then everyone just shut up and move on with your lives.
Yeah.
So now us as fans, I'm going to see Brooks at the Waste Management now. I'm going to see Bryson at the Memorial.
Right.
Great. Now I think I'll take him for 4 majors and 8 signature events 12 times a year.
Absolutely.
All day long.
And also, we talked about this just a couple of weeks ago. Without the official World Golf Rankings, we're also cutting off our nose to spite our face in a lot of ways, where you got a guy like Bryson's not on the U.S. Olympic team.
Exactly.
Right? So now, how you do that, fine. There's nuance. I get it. And some people will say, well, LIV, they only play 3 rounds. It's smaller fields, whatever you want to say. Put that in the calculations. There are very smart statisticians out there who can come up with a way to do this.
Yes.
Maybe LIV events don't earn you as many official World Golf Rankings points, but they still earn you some. And then, take your signature events and make it so that the top 50 guys in world rankings across all leagues are in those events.
Exactly.
Right? And now we're seeing them come together. So now they're fighting like hell on LIV.
Absolutely.
To try to get into those events. And now that also brings where a lot of people call LIV like not as high stakes,
like
all
tour.
that type of stuff. Now you're playing hard over there to get your official World Golf Rankings. All that made what it is. But it just shows there's still problems here, and it shows that we're not getting the answers. But I want your take on it. Let us know in the comments. Do you believe this PGA Tour insider? Are these real things that Jon Rahm is saying, or do you think it's just a stirring the pot? And where do you think we're going to land with this? And do we need a little bit more information? Because now it looks like we're headed to 25 with no new news. Let us know. Subscribe wherever you get your podcast. We'll see you in the next one.